All right, good afternoon. Thank you all for coming. This is our second property tax workshop that we've had today. We had a session this morning that was a little better attended this morning, but we will give the same presentation. Once we get to the end, we'll give you all an opportunity to ask questions. We'll have a microphone that we'll pass around. Our staff member will have it. I just ask that when we get to the question and answer portion, our staff member will hand you the microphone. Please just state your name, and then you can ask the question, and you'll have an opportunity to ask any question you want to ask. If there's multiple questions, you can ask them. So I just want to make sure we get as much information out to the public as we can. All right, so we'll get started with the presentation. All right, so a little bit of an overview. What are property taxes and how are they generated? What do property taxes fund within the city of Sebastian? Homestead versus non-homestead impact, and potential alternatives to property taxes. And just real quick, before I get started, I did just want to recognize we have some of our staff here as well. And then we also have Councilmember Ed Dodd is in the back. And I saw Mayor Fred Jones, he's here as well. He just stepped out the back. And then we have additional staff members here as well in case any questions are for them as we go forward. So why are we hosting this workshop and why are we doing it at this time? So there's lots of discussion regarding property taxes and potential elimination. State legislation is discussing property tax elimination and reduction bills. House Joint Resolution 203 passed the Florida House last Thursday, February 19th, which proposes the elimination of all non-school ad valorem taxes. So there is an exemption in there that continues to leave school property taxes on the bill, but the rest of ad valorem taxes are proposed to be eliminated with this House Joint Resolution. What now happens, and I'll give you a little bit of information on how the process works. I know many of you know the process, but just for knowledge, the House and the Senate both have to pass a similar bill. It has to be the same language that's in the bill. So at this time, the House has passed this one. It's now been sent to the Senate. The Senate will discuss it, they can modify it, and then it can go back and forth between the two parties until they both agree on a final bill that is finalized amongst the legislature. Once that happens, it then goes to Governor DeSantis. He will sign off on it or veto it. He has the authority to do either one. At that time, anything related to property tax will have to go for a referendum to the ballot. So a bill gets established, it then goes to the governor, he signs off on it. That language is then drafted to take it for referendum for voters to decide. And at that point, it is up to the voters to determine which way they want to go on a specific bill. So our goal here today is to provide factual information to our residents regarding the usage of property taxes within the city of Sebastian. You'll hear some references in my presentation today, and it's based on references that are made statewide, and I'm here to just show you kind of how Sebastian is different from the rest of the state when it comes to property taxes and how potential measures could potentially affect our operations and your quality of life within the city. So what are property taxes? Property taxes are local ad valorem, which means value-based, taxes on real property and commercial personal property value. Property taxes are put on your tax bill utilizing a millage rate mechanism, and we'll go through how that's formulated. But the millage rate is set annually by our city council, and with the setting of the millage rate, we go through many budget workshops over the summertime that are open and available for the public to attend to provide input. We have a citizen advisory budget committee that is also members of the public that are not elected. They're all appointed by council, and they review the budget and a whole throughout the budget process. And they at the end of their season within the committee, they are charged with making a recommendation to city council. Then when we get to September, we are required statutorily to have 2 public hearings on the budget. And at that time, and with the second hearing that happens in late September, the millage rate is established. The millage rate is then assessed annually by the county, or properties are assessed annually by the county property appraiser. And the millage rate property taxes are collected annually by the county property tax collector. Property taxes are a stable and predictive revenue source for the city when preparing the annual budget, and primary local funding source for our general fund operations, which we will showcase that on some future slides. So how are your property taxes calculated? The property tax formula includes a just market value that is assigned to your property by the property appraiser. Then, with that, on an annual basis, it is evaluated. Every property is looked at. However, we have a couple things that are required from legislature. Save Our Homes limits the just market value from increasing more than 3% on an annual basis for homestead properties, and no more than 10% on non-homestead properties. So your property values in relation to property tax, when you go to sell your home, you have a specific value that's going to be higher than what your valuation is on your property taxes. This equals your assessed value. Then we have exemptions. Homestead exemption is one of the exemptions we have. There are additional ones if you qualify for those in regards to veterans, disabled veterans, quadriplegics, things like that offer additional exemptions. That determines your taxable value. Then your taxable value is multiplied by the established millage rate from City Council. To simplify it, 1 mil in a millage rate, 1 mil is equal to $1 per $1,000 of taxable value. Within the city of Sebastian, our millage rate is currently 3.4455. Therefore, for every dollar of $1,000 of taxable value, it's multiplied by 3.4455 to establish your city property taxes. So what's homestead and what's non-homestead properties? The homestead is thrown around quite a bit. Very frequently when we talk about property taxes. Homestead properties are your primary. Florida is your residency is your primary home. You can have multiple homes, but you're only eligible for one homestead, and it has to be your primary residence. So you can own multiple properties in Florida or other properties in other states, but the one residence in Florida has to be your primary residence to qualify for homestead exemptions. You receive up to $50,000 in exemptions. I mentioned earlier there's opportunities that people can get additional exemptions based on certain factors that have been allocated from the legislature. And once again, your assessment growth is capped at 3% annually with Save Our Homes. Non-homestead properties, these are typically your rentals, your second homes, commercial properties. Those are going to be classified under non-homestead. There is no homestead exemption, so they do not qualify for the exemption. And they have their higher taxable value relative to market value. Their annual growth is capped at 10%. So I just mentioned our millage rate is 3.4455 within the city of Sebastian. You all receive an annual tax bill that obviously includes additional taxes other than just the city of Sebastian. So what this dollar bill represents, and we broke it down to a dollar bill so that we could just allocate it by cent, and that's really percentage. But it kind of showcases a good little glimpse on what your tax bill looks like when it relates to ad valorem taxes. So every property within the city of Sebastian gets their tax bill. Indian River County receives 36.1 cents of every dollar that you pay in property taxes. 36.1. I do want to highlight that does include the Emergency Services District, which does provide fire rescue to the city of Sebastian. Okay, so I just want to highlight that. The city does not have its own fire rescue department, so we do utilize the services of Indian River County for that. Indian River County Schools, 34.8 cents of every dollar paid in property taxes goes to the schools, goes to the school board. That's used to fund the schools throughout the county. The city of Sebastian receives 20.8 cents of every dollar. That's what we are allocated based on our millage rate that's established by the city council. And then when you break it up amongst all the parties that receive a portion of this dollar bill, the city receives 20.8 cents. Hospital district receives 4.6 cents, and other taxing districts, which includes water management districts, improvement districts, mosquito control, things like that fall underneath your ad valorem taxes, receive 3.7 cents of every dollar. So some specific considerations when we're looking at Sebastian and how our taxes are utilized. So our assessment caps have caused assessed value to be reduced to 71.87% of market value. That means that when we take the market value of every property within the city of Sebastian, thanks to Save Our Homes limits of 3% increase, and then also the non-homestead 10% increase cap, those properties, when it comes to their tax bill, is only being shown on an average of about 71.87% of their market value on their property taxes. Additionally, within the state, there are approximately, I think it's 411 cities within the state of Florida. The city of Sebastian ranks in the top 20 in a not so good category when it comes to property taxes. That's what the second item shows. It says 15.25% of assessed value is homesteaded versus a statewide average is a little bit over 5%. Now that's been done on purpose. You all live in Sebastian. You've come to Sebastian to build your homes and your families for a reason. You enjoy the small quality of life, the small fishing village, the small town feel that Sebastian has. However, with that, we've had a very small commercial base, and we also are, for the most part, heavily dependent on homestead, and that's what this shows with the 14.25%. That basically shows that of assessed value, 15.2%, 5% is homesteaded versus the statewide average of 5%. So I mentioned earlier that the House of Representatives has passed a bill, and that bill it entered the floor on Thursday as House Joint Resolution 203. The initial language within that bill involved a $100,000 tax exemption increase annually for the next 10 years with a complete elimination on year 10. However, so what that would have meant was year 1 it's $100,000, year 2 it's $200,000, year 3 it's $300,000, and so forth and so on until you get to year 10 with a complete elimination. However, on the floor it was amended, and that this often happens that there's amendments to bills that are filed. The amendment was a complete elimination of property taxes effective January 1st of 2027. I mentioned earlier that it still has a process to follow. It still has to go through the Senate. They still have to come to some decision on what the final bill is going to look like. And then it still does have to go to the voters. But the information that we have standing here today is what bill has passed one of the branches. And we want to ensure that we provide those facts to you all as well. The city estimates collection of ad valorem taxes in fiscal year 26, which is what we build our current existing budget around. Our budget year is October 1st to September 30th, to be $8,393,178. Some interesting facts about the city. Total properties in the city, 14,540 as of the latest number. It's risen a little bit with that. Homesteaded properties equate for 67% of the 64% of the properties within the city, a total of 9,279 properties. Non-homestead is 36% of the city. The dollar figure that allocates to both of these, homesteaded properties equates to $4,756,309 when it comes to property taxes. That's 57% of our property taxes generated. That if this bill goes forward and passes, would be eliminated. Non-homestead properties currently generate $3,636,869. or 43% of our property tax revenue. The city's general fund would see a reduction in revenues of $4,756,309, equal to 24% of the annual general fund revenue. Our general fund brings in a little over $19 million, and this would be approximately 24% of that in a reduction. The city's homestead property percentage of 64% is almost double the state average. And the 57% of property tax revenue that is homestead is over 20 percentage points higher than the state average of 36%. So it is mentioned, it is well versed out, throughout the state, that this would only impact local governments about 33%. I'm showing you right here that in the city of Sebastian, and why one size doesn't fit all across the entire state, that homestead property tax elimination would cause us to see a 24% reduction in our entire general fund revenue. So here's the effects of this. What you'll see, the first line is expenditures by department. This is an important one. Our total budget, as I mentioned, was a little over $19,800,000 is a rough number. For our total budget, our police department expenditures come in close to around $9 million when it comes to general fund. The bill that has currently passed the House does have a carve out that we need to maintain funding for law enforcement. That is something that has been fully supported by the city of Sebastian, by our council. We just renegotiated our union contract with the police officers last fiscal year to ensure that they were being paid adequate wages and that they would have sufficient funding as we continue to go forward with that. However, $9 million immediately, so when we talk about 24% of our total budget being eliminated with homestead properties, remember, I can't touch $9 million of it. So that leaves me somewhere in the range of $10.5 million to now cut $4.6 million out of every other department within the city. The second column is revenues. We generate on a balanced budget here in the city of Sebastian. So revenues come in, expenditures go out, they have to balance themselves out. We have a balanced budget every single fiscal year, and that is passed once again in concurrency with our millage rate by City Council. The last one shows revenues after HJR 203 if it was to pass, and it shows on that table, that shows a basic reduction of property taxes of a little over $4 million, and you can see how the bar graphs tend to come down once we get to HJR 203 if it were to pass the voters. So once again, you all are here to really understand what our taxes, what property taxes fund for the city of Sebastian. Obviously our largest department, and on the next slide, you'll see percentage points that are allocated to each of these departments, and I'll go over that on the next slide. But our core services, police department, that's your road patrol, your detectives, your SWAT team, any emergency response that is needed. It includes dispatch, our trainings that take place within the police department. All of their equipment is all funded underneath the police department within general fund. Public works includes roads, bridges, and maintenance, garage fleet maintenance, sidewalks, and engineering. This is, and I do want to state at this time that this doesn't mean some of the large capital public works projects that you see that take place in regards to paving of roads. We do have an additional revenue source that is specific to its use, which is called discretionary sales tax and local option gas tax. They can't be used to pay staff. They can only be used on those infrastructure projects. So those paving of roads, they aren't really looked at this, but your everyday pothole, your everyday maintenance that takes place on the roadways, when you call into the citizen request line to complain about anything within the city, that call goes into public works. and then someone is sent out to address your situation and speak with you to provide a response. Information technology, cybersecurity. Here in council chambers tonight, with this meeting, it's being broadcast, it's being videotaped. That's all part of our IT department. They oversee all of our computers, our CAD RMS system that goes with the police department. They also ensure our cybersecurity for the entire city when it comes to all of our software and infrastructure that is needed for technology throughout the city. Parks and recreation. You drive by a park every single day for the most part in the city of Sebastian. I've never seen a city this small with this many parks. We have 23 parks. That's not including the county properties that are also here, like next to us with the conservation land. 23 parks that are maintained by the city by the city. That takes a lot of manpower, a lot of gas, fuel, and getting out there and cutting those. We also oversee special events that take place within the city, and we have recreational programs. We have a senior center that's next door. We have a community center that's down off of Jackson and provides programs there as well. Public facilities, the facility we're here in tonight, the police department, all of our restroom facilities across the city, and our yacht club, community center, all those facilities that are provided for the public are funded by general fund. Our finance department, they handle all the city's finances. They handle all of our investments. They ensure we have a balanced budget. They calculate and crunch all the numbers to get us good reports so that we can accurately give this information out to the public. Planning and zoning. This is our community development department. They handle everything that comes in from a developer. They handle everything that comes in from a property owner in regards to, you want to do an addition on your house, or you want to have a fence permit or driveway permit, or any of those measures that come into the city have to go through that department. That department has a total staffing range of 5 people, 5 or 6. So, you're looking at, when you start to reduce things, you start to have to reduce staffing as well. Code enforcement. Code enforcement falls underneath, it is run underneath our police department. However, it is separated as a separate line item within the budget. They go out and they enforce our code throughout the city to enforce and maintain the condition of homes and properties throughout the city, so that you don't just kind of go down a street and it looks like an old dilapidated community. Human resources is funded under general fund. That's mainly an internal focus. However, when it comes to hiring employees, we do have to get out and do some marketing and get out and bring in new people to city operations. And the last element of this is city administration. The city attorney, the city clerk, and myself, the city manager, all of our departments fall underneath the general fund as well. So I told you the next slide was going to go through general fund expenditures by department. This showcases our entire general fund of, once again, $19,883,990. 45% of that, roughly $8.5 million, goes to our police department. Facilities maintenance is 5% of the budget. Parks and recreation is 10%. Cemetery operations is 1%. Community development, planning and zoning is 4%. Non-departmental is 9%. City council, less than 1%. City manager's office, 3%. City clerk's office, 2%. And city attorney's office, 1%. Finance department, 4%. Management information systems, IT, 4%. Human resources, 2%. Roads, drainage, maintenance, roads, maintenance, sign shop is 8%, and then fleet management is 2%. So once again, I just want to bring to your attention, looking at this graph, I can't touch the $8.47 million. So now I have to cut, if it was to pass, I have to cut or generate additional revenues to replace over $4 million out of the rest of these departments. So where do these cuts take place, or vice versa? How do we generate additional fees and things like that? So comparison of general fund personnel cost to total expenditures. Once again, the green bar showcases total expenditures in general fund, around $19.8 million. Personnel cost in the city of Sebastian, which is the orange one, is $15.3 million. So there's a difference of about $4.5 million between personnel and our total expenditures. That includes very minimal capital expense. Our capital expenses for this year out of general fund were less than $200,000. Typically all of our capital comes out of our other funding sources that are only eligible for that purpose. And then operating is your everyday supplies that are provided to our staff to get their job done, whether it be mulch or fuel or paper, pens, all those things, equipment for the police department, all those things fall underneath our operating expenditures. And once again, all of this is shown in our budget document, which is annually published by the city. It's on our website. And I'll state this, and I'll say this in every one. I'm happy to look at our budget with anyone to kind of look down into what some of these areas really look like on individual departments. So property taxes versus other sources. Property tax is more stable, it's more flexible, which equals less waste because we can divert resources to needed areas. Once again, this is one of those areas where I say more flexible because, as mentioned before, we do have funding sources that come in. Discretionary sales tax, local option gas tax are two that are probably our major ones that come in that can only be utilized for certain items. It can only be used for infrastructure, land acquisition, road improvements, things like that. It really has a defined area. Where property taxes, we can use it as we deem fit. More predictable, which makes our budgets more reliable. I'll share that we've seen, just for example, in local option gas tax, what we had budgeted last fiscal year, we came in under that. Local option gas tax is an additional tax that's added on to the fuel, and then we get a breakdown of that happens. That budgetary item actually reduced over the last fiscal year. So not everything is increasing. I know our costs are increasing when we go to buy asphalt or concrete or any everyday supply, but that line item actually decreased. So it makes property taxes a lot more reliable when it comes to budget preparation. Bond markets prefer property tax because it is a guaranteed that it's coming in. They know what the numbers are going to be. It doesn't fluctuate up and down. Once we establish it on an annual basis, those numbers go in. They know that we're going to recoup what we say we're going to get in that. We typically budget around 96% of our property tax because you can't budget 100%. And we have to, by statutory requirements, we have to budget at least 95%. And our range typically comes in somewhere to 96 to 98% of property taxes paid on an annual basis. But when we talk about bond markets, if property taxes were eliminated, there is the possibility that, our credit and scores and things like that and bond ratings when we go to get debt could be decreased due to having less of a stable revenue source. And with that, I will mention the city and general fund currently has zero debt. So we have not had any debt in general fund over the last couple of years, but that would be a potential option as we look to go forward with that. Exemptions with portability, limited growth by state caps, and transparency. There's a clear formula and publicly set rates that involve many public meetings regarding property taxes. Other sources, fees. Fees are limited to services provided. We can only charge fees for the services that we provide, and then if you raise those fees up to a certain level, people just will not want those services, so therefore it's kind of an unstable thing to where we have to raise it to cover our costs, but if we raise it too high, people are just going to stop partaking in that service. Assessments are limited to specific service areas. Grants, project specific and limited. We've applied for over $30 million in grants over the last 3 years here at the city. We've received quite a few of them. However, we are starting to see delays in grant funding from the state and federal levels. Those timelines seem to be extending on us. Whenever we are awarded, from when we get awarded a grant until the documents are finally executed and we are eligible to proceed. And also we have seen a reduction in funding from the state and federal level for grants. And in this year's proposed state budget, there is a reduction. Obviously it has not been finalized. It could change. There could be some negotiations that happen, but some of our funding sources that we've utilized in the past for grants have seen a reduction in available funding. And finally, special assessments. These are very restricted use when it comes to special assessments. So if property taxes were eliminated, some immediate impacts, and when I say immediate, I want to clarify, if the bill was to pass as currently presented, it would go into effect January 1st of 2027, which would impact our budget going into fiscal year 27-28. So the budget that we would pass that would begin in October 1st of 2027. So immediate is us having to start looking forward to the future. Removal of local control and responsiveness to tax changes. Major general fund revenue loss as shown by the 24% reduction. Longer response times to citizen requests due to staffing reductions. Reduced parks and recreation programs and maintenance. Infrastructure maintenance delays, which in turn cost us more down the road, because if we don't maintain our infrastructure, maintain our buildings, maintain our roads, that costs more because they're going to get worse quicker, and therefore we're going to have to do a larger project which falls underneath the capital. That's a different funding source, but it's going to cost us more money. It's easier to maintain it than it is to replace it. And an increased reliance on fees or other taxes. So when we look at where would funds come from, possible scenarios. So shift the burden to non-homestead and commercial properties, which, that comes with a cost. As we discussed non-homestead properties are renters, commercial properties, things, second homes and things like that. Well, typically your renters are, sometimes not the case, but a lot of times it's affordable housing. It's attainable housing. People are renting those because that's what they can afford. The property owner is then going to pass that increase along to those tenants. Same thing with commercial. Commercial taxes, if they go up, who's going to bear the brunt of that? Everyone that uses that commercial property and those services provided by them. Shift to special assessments on the tax bill. Road maintenance assessment, we've started to look into this a little bit, and then also street lighting assessment. With this, it would have to be specific to those areas, so it's not like we could do a road maintenance assessment on the entire city. We could only do it in specific areas where we're planning to do work, and then that would be an assessment on property owners to have their road paved or maintained in that area. Street lighting, we have street lighting around the city in certain areas. We could do a district that then every property owner in that area would have to pay into a street lighting assessment. This is utilized in many cities and counties across the state. State funds, loss of control, increase fees for services, and initiate new fees. This is where we would start to look at potential new fees in regards to parking fees, where we have public parking, start charging fees. Boat ramp parking fees, I do want to clarify that. Since we received grant funding for some of our boat ramps, we can't charge really to launch the boat, but we can charge you to park your trailer. So it would be a trailer parking fee in regards to that. Increased recreation program fees. In addition to that, when you start to look at Parks and Recreation, we have some really good partners that provide recreational opportunities to our residents, specifically our youth residents. We have a successful Little League program, popular football, flag football, cheerleading. Those all use city facilities currently at no cost, and it keeps the cost to those residents whose kids are participating low as well, because they don't have to pay the city for maintenance of the fields. If this were to happen, that would be one of the first things we'd look at. So therefore, in turn, when every kid signs up to play baseball, those fees have now increased because the city is going to have to charge a user fee to use those fields for each season. In addition, you look at other free parks amenities that we have, those would all be assessed. We'd look at the programs that we offer. And one of the things I want to make clear on this is we're not saying we can't operate without the dollars, but it's going to come at an expense or a different fee associated with things. So that's where we really start to look at this and kind of really looking at the impact that could take place across the city without that roughly $4 million or 24% of the general fund. Key takeaways for residents: property taxes fund your core city services. We provide things that people here want. Our recreation facilities and parks are what the public want. We get asked all the time to ask, why doesn't the city just buy that property? Why don't you build another park? We're constantly asked that question. Anytime a developer comes into the city, why doesn't the city just buy it? People want parks. They've shown that they want it, and we provide that. Core services such as emergency services require consistent funding. Like I said, we just entered into a union contract with our police department. What happens whenever that ceiling is set on next year's funding level? Okay, that's what we are mandated to require to have. And then we all of a sudden have to cut from every other department at some point. We don't cut police services, but it may not be an increase into the funding. Homestead exemptions reduce individual tax burden. Eliminating property tax would require service cuts or new revenue sources. Once again, just thinking outside the box and looking at what other revenue sources we could potentially explore within the city. And decisions involve trade-offs between taxes and service levels. With this, there's no doubt there would be service level reductions. If we go back to the one slide that shows how heavily dependent our general fund is on personnel services, it's really hard to cut over $4 million without affecting personnel. What does that mean? I can't tell you today. We're going to do some exercises and look into it. Does it mean reduction in hours of operation? Does it mean reducing hours? Does it mean furloughs that have been done in the past? Does it mean reduction in staffing? I think all of those options have to be looked at. And I think, our goal today is to provide you all this information, allow you to, ask questions as we go through this process all the way until November. Once we finally, the reason we're doing it before we know what's going to be on the ballot is we are not allowed, statutorily not allowed from a city to expend any funds advocating for or against the bill once it is introduced. A ballot initiative referendum once it's introduced. So once it gets past the Senate and the House come to a decision on whatever they decide, and it then goes to the governor, once that's signed off on and that ballot language is established, we can't have this workshop because I'm spending, taxpayer dollars standing here before you today. So I'd be happy to meet with any of you as we go forward through the summer once we know a little bit more. We utilize services of Florida League of Cities. They'll have plenty of information once we finally get to a final decision. And if there is time in the future where we kind of know where it's headed a little bit better, we'd be happy to have another one. But for today, that's all I have today. We'll open it up for question and answer. Once again, we've got our staff member, Jason, who is going to walk around. Any questions you have, make sure you state your name, and then you can ask the questions. Questions? Yeah, we'll start back there, Jess.
My name is Robin Diaz, and I appreciate the information that you've provided here, but I have a number of issues with the city of Sebastian, and what I will say is this, is you have many people in this community, because property taxes are so high, are having to choose between, okay, do we eat 3 meals today or only 1? Same with medication. And I realize you have people to pay, you have a budget. I used to run corporations myself, and I understand that sometimes you have to make those hard decisions where you have to review your staff. Has your staff increased substantially? over the years compared to the increase in residents. So that's one thing. The other thing is when I have gone in and talked to the gentleman in Sebastian about my property taxes, I'm never able to get to the value adjustment board. That needs to change. We need to have a voice. And I feel like he's the goalkeeper preventing people from getting there. So I really wish you would address that to give us an opportunity to say what we need to say, because he's not the end-all be-all. So I would ask that. And the other thing is, I realize Sebastian is a great place to live, but people on fixed incomes cannot make it here. And that's really why I'm here. We are forced to sell our home because we can't make all the payments. And so, between living and then, trying to put away money for our property taxes and insurance and everything else. And what's crazy is when we moved here, I used to live in Sebastian River Landings. My property taxes were like $1,200, and now they're at $4,200. And it's like, why the big increase? What has happened? So I would love a chance to sit down with you and find out, what happened, what took place. We're trying to do our part by not spending, doing things ourselves. We're both retired. But, a lot of my neighbors too, they just can't make it. We need your help. We don't need increases in taxes, and I realize you have other projects planned, which is great, but maybe you need to hold those back for a little bit, because the people are suffering, the economy is hurting, and we just need you to work with us. We don't want to work against you. We want you to work with us. Okay?
Yes, ma'am. Thank you. So I'm just going to address a couple of the things that you said. So in regards to meeting with the person in Sebastian, in regards to your property tax, your home valuation with the Value Adjustment Board, I believe you're speaking that you may have gone to the Indian River County Property Appraiser's office and spoken with them. They are the ones that handle the values of the properties and how that's evaluated. But I'd be happy to sit down and speak with you in regards to the city's budget, and then also see if I can facilitate a discussion with the property appraiser for you. I'll be happy to do that. Second thing, I know you mentioned a question in regards to employees and the increase in population as we've kind of gone through the years. So in 2006, the city had 7.63 employees per 1,000 population. So for every 1,000 people that lived in Sebastian in 2006, we had a staffing level of 7.63 employees. In fiscal year 2026, we have a number of 5.97 full-time employees per 1,000 people in our population. So we've actually decreased over 20 years. Some of that, obviously there was a downturn in the economy shortly after 2006, which caused those numbers to come down. And then we dealt with other factors that have happened. I'll tell you, from 2025 to 2026, our number dropped. We did reduce positions as well. So I know that that's something that we keep metrics on, and we keep an eye on that. I'll tell you that it's hard to gauge this on a statewide level because many different municipalities operate differently. Some have fire rescue, some have utilities, which the city has neither. So I can't give you a comparison to how our number evaluates to everyone else within the state. But I can tell you that our number of 5.97 per 1,000 residents is pretty low. Yes, sir. Oh.
Thank you. I just have a couple of discrete questions. One is, a lot of my neighbors think that you could raise the sales tax to make up the difference. Is that correct or incorrect?
We cannot. The city cannot. The only one that has the authority on sales tax is the state, And I said this earlier, I have not heard that as an option currently from the state.
Second question is, the state wants us to convert, and we want to convert septic to sewer, which is I believe, $300 million by 2030. Where does this whole, I mean, you can't talk out of both sides of their mouths. Is that still a plan?
I don't think that's, so first off, the utility is operated by Indian River County. The city does not have a utility. So when it comes to septic to sewer conversions, we are dependent on the county. The county is currently going through a feasibility study to convert the entire city to see what the feasibility of it is and what potentially could look like. I think your $300 million number for the entire city is pretty low. I think we're probably north of 500 million and even getting higher by the day, to be honest. But in regards to that, I can tell you the city applied for a grant. We received a grant from the state for $3.4 or $3.6 million to assist property owners in our first phase of an area that we deem as being the most important to the Indian River Lagoon, which is the area right along the lagoon. So we did get those grant dollars to facilitate that, but you know, it's a popular topic right now. Eventually, I feel like it's probably going to go to something else. So there are dollars there. We are applying for as much grant money as we can, and we're just dependent on the county at this point in regards to those conversions. And we've had numerous discussions with them. They are working on, like I said, a feasibility study, and we're actively involved in that process. So as far as it doesn't hit general fund, I'll say that. That's not a general fund item, but I agree that, you know, soliciting state assistance with that funding mechanism is going to be important.
Like you don't know. Terry McGinn, Miller Drive, Sebastian.
Chuck Meckling. I want to thank everybody that showed up tonight. One of the things I want to say is no matter where you come from on this topic, it's a complex issue. And it's an emotional issue because it threatens our livelihood, where we live, how we make ends meet, how we pay our bills, and what the future may look like. I want to say that I conduct a lot of business in the city of Sebastian and have for a long time, and I love this town. I believe that there is a need for more commercial development to help balance a budget. I think that the staff that the city has is exceptional to deal with. I think that they care about the city. I think that they go to their job every day and they put their best foot forward to make ends meet. And they have the same problems that we have when it comes to where do we spend a dollar. And they have, in my opinion, the thoughts and livelihood of the residents in mind when they make these decisions. One of the things I feel is that Sebastian doesn't get enough voice in the overall vision of our county. Like Brian said, the county provides utilities, the state mandates a septic conversion concept. The money to do something like that is going to be an astronomical number. And the concept of going up and down all the streets in Sebastian to put sewer lines in will be an astronomical concept, even with the funding. And so when we talk about what our future's like, we have to take a look at how we're treated by and how we interact with the county. And it's not that the county is our enemy, but at the same time, they have a hand in our pocket with what takes place and how we move forward. And if this whole situation takes place with the property tax, it will affect the county as well, and the county will have to look at cuts, and that could steamroll into more issues up here in Sebastian. So one thing I would say is as this year rolls around to election time coming up, that talk to your friends, neighbors, and talk about having awareness of what's going to take place in our community and have an awareness of where all this is going to go, because if we don't, we're going to have the short end of the stick with things. And it's a concerning fact to have the state take such strong stances towards the whole idea of limiting cities and counties in their ability to provide the vision of what they feel is best for their residents. And so there's several bills at the state level. Sebastian Daly recently ran an article about some of those bills. Read the article in Sebastian Daly. It's pretty much earth-shattering. The concept of the recent townhome project that came in front of everybody, that would have been permitted at the state level, no public hearings, nothing being said at Sebastian. It would have just been permitted. And that's the sort of stuff that then takes things into another realm. And you want to talk about unhappiness, that's how things get turned around in the wrong direction. So I would just say an awareness of what things, I think that Brian has always worked to the very best for the budget situation here in the city. And I think that the staff and the council does a tremendous job providing. And it's tough for them as well as everybody else to make ends meet. I get it. And unfortunately, everybody wants to have better roads, more traffic lights, more stop signs, more parks, more things. But at the same time, there has to be an expense to be able to provide for those issues. And so that's the question at hand, and this situation people need to have an awareness of, because if this tax base goes away, let alone the concept of just holding the line, but if it goes away, the other concepts that have to be put into place, or a decrease in services, or parks being shuttered, or things like that, might become a reality, and that won't please people either. I am sure of that.
Hi, Vicki Drumheller, Joy Haven Drive. I'm just curious, has there been any talk between the different municipalities in the county about a consolidation of law enforcement, since that's 45% of our budget?
No. That has not been something, I know that idea has been thrown around in the past. And I think here in Sebastian, one of the quick things with that was we wanted to maintain our police department and their responsiveness. And I'll state right now, we're fully supportive of our police department. That's something that could potentially be looked at in the future. I don't want to ever take that off the list, but it has not been in serious discussion currently. Not to say, with legislation that it couldn't potentially be discussed. There's also the discussion, things such as a centralized dispatch, things like that that could potentially relieve some expenses. But those all come with other things that happen. I would say that, overall, the city and our residents are very happy with our police department. Their community engagement and being available to the public is first class, second to none. But yeah, that's something that could potentially be looked at.
Robin Diaz, I forgot a couple things. One area that could be a cost savings that I can think of right away is, and I don't understand why now garbage is included in our property taxes. Why didn't they keep that separate so that that would not increase your budget? If you took that out, granted, I don't know how much it would be, but the point is, if you're looking for cost savings, let's start at some of the small stuff. I mean, because that's an individual payment that needs to be made by the owners versus having it come with your property taxes.
So I'll just provide a little bit of clarification on that, and thank you. You can ask all the questions you want to. I want to first say that.
Thank you.
But in regards to garbage, that is actually a non-ad valorem assessment that's on your tax bill. So it does not fall underneath the property taxes and ad valorem that's in this discussion at all.
But it adds to the amount being charged, though, doesn't it?
Well, it adds to your, it adds to your individual tax bill, and it, but however, it
Yes.
falls underneath non-ad valorem, on your bill. So therefore, it is not addressed or even looked at within this, and it is a service that was provided universally. The county is also going universal, so the county and the city are both universal at this time, and they both are using the non-ad valorem assessment method for collection of rates.
Okay, the other thing is, I saw information about enhancing the park or the river area, whichever it was, and the price tag, I think, was 10 million. Is that still on the books?
So I'll just clarify a little bit on that. The price tag, 10 million, I'm not sure where that number came from, but we do currently have roughly $3 million budgeted. We have finalized the grant agreement with Land and Water Conservation. It is a federal grant for $1.5 million in grant funds. The additional 1.5 will be funded out of discretionary sales tax, which has nothing to do with property tax. It's one of those additional revenue sources that I mentioned a couple times that comes into the city, and only it has specific uses. It can only be used for land acquisition, infrastructure improvements, and items of that such. So that's not, those revenues don't cross each other at all. It is a completely separate, different element that is not eligible for general fund. So none of our general fund operations can utilize discretionary sales tax for their general fund operations.
Okay, and would the city of Sebastian be willing to undergo an audit by Blaze Angolia?
I mean, we've been here the whole time. I mean, I have no
Right, I'm
concerns
not sure
with
how
that.
that happens, if you have to request it, but I just thought, hey, what a way to prove that you have no fluff in your budget. That's what I was thinking.
Yeah, I mean, we're here. We've communicated back and forth with Doge every single time they made requests this year or last in 2025. Our budgets are submitted to the state every single year.
Right.
They have full, in-depth look at our budget. They have that full access to our budgets, so they can see everything that's happening in the city of Sebastian.
Okay, just thought I would ask. Thank you, I appreciate your time.
Yes, ma'am.
Before the meeting ends, this isn't a question, it's sort of a statement. I was on the Budget Advisory Committee for 4 years, and I can tell anyone who asks that that budget is scrutinized down to the last penny, and that before it's submitted to the council to be voted on, it's reviewed by a lot of what I consider very educated people who look very closely at all the line items. I wish I had $1 for every time we argued about the golf course. Secondly, as far as the cost of living and being able to survive, I live on a fixed income between the insurance and taxes, health insurance, car insurance, homeowners insurance, property taxes, consumes 50% of my total living budget. And if I can't live in Sebastian, I probably can't live anywhere else. That just means that what the state is doing, trying to reduce the property taxes, is a fool's errand. And I just hope, and we're not going to have very much to say about it. This is probably the best city on the east coast of Florida as far as I'm concerned. I am a cheerleader for Sebastian. And I doubt that the people in Tallahassee don't have a clue about how real people live. Thank you.
Anyone else? Any other questions? Okay, so I'm here. I'll be here. We've got another meeting at 6:30 if you have any questions for me that you didn't want to ask in front of everyone. And then once again, my office is available. Our Chief Financial Officer, Mr. Brian Stewart, is here as well. He's available to answer any questions that come up in regards to our budget. I you know, tell people, go watch, you can watch last year's property tax workshop, or sorry, budget workshops that we did with council. It's very in-depth. It goes through every single department and pretty much every single line item within every department. It was 2 full days of a workshop here in council chambers. We invite you to come back this summer. We'll have those dates advertised. I believe it's July 15th and 16th or June 15th and 16th, one of the two. I might be off on the month. I apologize, but we'll get those dates for you. And then also our public hearings. We have 2 public hearings which are required every September. Come out and be heard. We're open to those discussions, and I'm happy to discuss anything regarding our budget with anyone. All right, well, thank you all for coming. Thank you all for asking great questions. I appreciate it, and thank you all. Have a good evening.